The modern symphony orchestra is a complex machine with many moving parts and many people moving them. But who is the leader? Who is in charge of the music? At first glance, it looks like it's that conductor person, the person standing on the raised platform in front, called a podium, by the way, and holding the baton. I mean, it's them taking the solo bows. It's their name in lights on the marquee in front of the concert hall. It's their face on the cover of the brochures and on the website, right? It must be them. But leadership in a symphony orchestra is way more complex than that. I think beautifully so. Let's break down the leadership structure of a symphony orchestra. The symphony orchestra is made up of many different instruments, organized by category. You have the strings, the largest instrument group, around 40 to 60 players. There are 4 different instruments: violins, divided into 2 sections that play different musical parts; violas. If you're new here, that's the instrument I play. Click the link up here if you want to learn more about that instrument. Cellos and double basses. So you end up with 5 sections in the strings: the 2 violin sections, violins 1 and 2, the viola section, the cello section, and the double bass section. And each section has anywhere from 6 to 16 people in it. The key thing to remember about string sections is that all the members of a section are playing the exact same musical part, all the same notes and rhythms at the same time. By the way, the reason this is done is for volume balance. Wind and percussion instruments, like trumpets and snare drums, are louder than string instruments. So to compensate acoustically for the volume difference, more string players are added. Remember, this is acoustic music, unamplified. If you want more volume, you have to add more players. It's part of the charm. So if you've got 6 or 10 or 16 string players all playing the same part, playing together, section cohesion becomes the #1 priority. To facilitate this cohesion, each section has a principal player, a person in charge. There's a principal bass, a principal cello, a principal viola, principal second violin, and a principal first violin called the concertmaster. These principal players determine, usually by setting the example with their own playing, how each note is to be played. How long, how short, how smooth, how jagged. When someone in the section has a question, the question goes to the principal of that section, who will then make a decision based on what's best for the section as a whole and what their section is doing in relation to all the other sections. The principal players are constantly monitoring what and how the other sections are playing and adjusting for even greater cohesion and subtle expression across the sections. As the principal adjusts, the players in their section adjust as well. And in this way, cohesion is constantly maintained within the entire string group. Only if there's a question or a problem does the conductor ever have to get involved in any of this. The wind players in a symphony orchestra are divided into 2 groups: woodwinds and brass. The woodwind instruments are flutes, oboes, clarinets, and bassoons. The brass are French horns, trumpets, trombones, and tuba. Now, just like with the strings, each wind instrument has its own section. There's a flute section, a clarinet section, a trumpet section, etc. Except these sections are much smaller, only 2 to 4 players usually. The key thing to remember about the winds is that it's just 1 player to a part. So, unlike the viola section, for example, where you may have 10 violas playing the same musical line, if you're looking at a flute section with 2 players, those players are playing 2 different parts. That means all the wind players in a symphony orchestra are soloists, just as if they were standing in front of the group taking the solo bows. Now, each wind section has a principal player that the other player defers to for some things, but it doesn't change the fact wind players are often on their own with their parts. This makes for a very different leadership collaboration dynamic from what's going on with the strings. Almost constantly, when players are shifting back and forth between blending, trying not to stand out, i.e., ensemble cohesion, and stepping forth into the spotlight to play their solo lines when required. And usually the details and nuances of this shifting is worked out among the players themselves. Conductors will seek to manage this to varying degrees, depending on the conductor, but it's often not necessary. Good wind sections take great pride in working out this musical dance, and they often show up to rehearsal early and stay late to ensure it works perfectly. The percussion is the section with the smallest number of players playing the largest number of instruments. You have timpani, the instrument used most often in the symphony. The timpani is kind of a special case. That player usually stands on their own, like a wind soloist. But there are so many other instruments: snare drums, tom-toms, bass drums, xylophone, glockenspiel, marimba, vibraphone, tubular bells, crash cymbals, suspended cymbals, cowbells, wind chimes, claves, guiros, ratchets, woodblocks, shakers, tempo blocks, bongos, congas. The list goes on and on and on and on. Here's how it works. Percussion players are generalists. Unlike the other players in the orchestra who specialize on one, maybe two instruments, percussionists play all the percussion instruments and are expected to play multiple instruments all at once. In orchestra music, percussion is usually used as special color or decoration to the general orchestra blend, kind of like a really strong spice. Your soup only needs a pinch or two of cayenne pepper. Too much is overpowering. So percussion is often used sparingly, just a few snare drum strikes, just a few cowbell notes. But because so many percussion instruments may be needed for a particular piece, the notes add up. And players are often very busy running from one instrument to the next, playing the cowbell notes one moment, then the wind chime notes the next, then the bass drum, then the xylophone, then back to the cowbell, onto the snare drum, etc. Now, who's in charge of all this? The percussion section has a principal player, just like the other sections. The principal percussionist is in charge of organizing the logistical plans for the players to get to the instruments they need when they need them, and for designing the percussion stage plan or position of every percussion instrument on stage to make it available to the right players at the right time. Depending on the complexity of the music, what instruments are needed, and the number of players you have to coordinate, this can be quite the 3D puzzle. The conductor usually doesn't have to think about any of this. They just look up at the percussion section when the climactic crash cymbal note is supposed to occur, and like magic, there's someone standing there holding the cymbals ready to play. I'm going to let you in on an industry secret. Most orchestra musicians feel ambivalent about conductors. Ultimately, the conductor is the musical boss, at least according to the symphony organizational chart. So some of the ambivalence can be attributed to the normal boss-employee dynamic. The conductor can fire you if they're not pleased. You may have also seen those old black and white video snippets of conductors behaving badly, throwing temper tantrums, and yelling at musicians in rehearsal. For a very long time, this kind of behavior was tolerated, even admired, as indicative of passionate artistry. And the remnants of this attitude still lingers in places, including the hearts and minds of some conductors and orchestra players. The other issue is ego. I sometimes call the podium that raised platform conductors stand on a pedestal, because often that's how many people treat it. The person standing there knows all. Their opinions matter most, and their preferences are to be catered to no matter what. Now, to be fair, It's very hard for anyone to keep one's ego in check when everyone around you is catering to your whims. This is the existential danger with all authority, no matter who it's bestowed on. You start to believe that your voice is most important and that your preferences are requirements that everyone around you must provide. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not anti-authority. Leadership, having a boss, someone in charge, is critical. Creativity requires it. It requires structure and parameters, not just freedom. There is no feeling like playing in a group being led by a great conductor, shepherding, facilitating, and yes, leading great music making. But it works best when the proper balance is struck. The musicians in a good symphony orchestra are highly trained, deeply experienced, and passionate professionals. Many of those musicians have way more experience playing the music than the conductor has conducting it. A conductor cannot enumerate enough musical detail or give enough instruction to not need the inspiration and creative agency of their collaborators, the other musicians on stage. So when a conductor, or boss of anything, steps onto the pedestal afforded them because of their leadership role, we should all remember the platform is not there for ego, but for your people to more clearly see you discharge your responsibilities to them so that we all can be about the business of making this great art.